Hey YouTube, this is Gregory Nelson. Welcome to What Did I Just Watch, episode 14. In this YouTube series, I introduce my favorite people to my favorite moments in professional wrestling. We cover moments that go to the absolute limit and discuss how they create drama, tell a story, and keep those viewers wanting more. Before we get into today's interview, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe, and if you really want to go the extra mile, you'll click the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Now, I do a little thing on this show where every 7 episodes, I have a real wrestling fan on as a guest. My guest today is one of my best friends, my brother from down under, Ben Lagan. I'm going to give Ben 60 seconds to cut a little promo and tell you about himself. Ben, the floor is yours.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Ben. I'm 24 years old, and I live in Sydney, Australia, where it is currently 1:32 a.m. at time of recording. I work as a martial arts instructor. I've been studying karate since I was 5, and I've now sort of evolved into, teaching and running a couple of my own schools there. When I'm not doing that, I also work in childcare. That's kind of my thing. I'm just a giant kid myself, so I love hanging out with kids and just fitting right in. And I kind of like take what I do. I kind of take what I do as like getting the chance to like build little human beings and putting good people into the world. So that's sort of what I'm passionate about. I'm also a lifelong wrestling fan, as my reason for visiting here today on the show. And along with that, I'm a huge wrestling figure collector, among other things, which we will get into a little bit more in a little bit. And that's actually how Greg and I met as well. So there we go.
Well, let's get right into that. Let's talk about how we met. What, 2014?
2014.
We found each other on Instagram some way, and you either found me or I either found you. But
I was just about to say, do you remember our first interaction?
no, but I remember when we actually became friends. By the way, if you haven't already, follow him on Instagram, Blue Lightning _ wrestling figs.
That's me.
So back in 2014, you were just starting to use Instagram, and you had this thing called the Blue Lightning 30-day challenge. It's where you post a figure every day, your favorite wrestler, favorite stable, favorite whatever, least favorite wrestler even, in the form of action figure photos. And this was such an awesome way for me and you to get to know each other. But the one post that really sticks out is for favorite stable, I posted a photo of the NWO, and the caption I wrote with it was Day 7, favorite faction, NWO. What you gonna do when the New World Order, Hulkamania, the WWE Network, Rent-A-Center, Hulk Hogan sex tape, Thunder in Paradise, Mr. T, and Blue Lightning Wrestling Figs runs wild on you? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specific post, but you talking about the challenge does bring back memories of, when as you did, I don't recall the first specific interaction that we had, but whenever I'd be doing anything or posting on Instagram, I'd always just have you as that other wrestling figure account that I knew and that we'd go back and forth with. And yeah.
Well, weirdly enough, your wrestling figure account has blown up while mine hasn't so much.
Well, mine blew up a little bit and has just kind of very much stagnated and stayed where it's been for a long time now. But
well, you're very consistent with your wrestling figure. You report news with your wrestling figures. You really go the extra mile when it comes to creating a real great wrestling figure account. I've incorporated other parts of my life into my Instagram account, like my lighting career, cats and stuff like that, t-shirts. It's not specifically wrestling figures. So that's going to happen.
Yeah, because I guess I have my personal Instagram, which is for my life, and then I have my secret nerdy wrestling figure Instagram, which is just for them as well.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ben, let me ask you one question. From your earliest memory, what was your first exposure to professional wrestling?
So my first exposure to pro wrestling actually came in the form of this, which, for those of you who recognize, is an original PS2 demo disc, which came with the PlayStation 2 when it launched. On here, we have games like, some of these are so obscure, Airblade, Dark Cloud, what else we got? Jak and Daxter, and WWF SmackDown Just Bring It. Now, there was a playable demo on here that you could play. I think you could only do one type of match, and I'm pretty sure the 6 wrestlers you could play as were The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H, Undertaker, Kane, and Kurt Angle, which were like the 6 biggest guys at the time of this game's release. Yeah. So me and my buddy both got these at the exact same time. We both happened to get PlayStation 2s for Christmas that year, got into the demo disc, and we're both like, oh my God, what is this demo game? How cool is this? That being my first glimpse at pro wrestling. So shortly after that, I went on and got the actual game as well, that we both started playing together. But being in Australia, wrestling wasn't sort of a mainstay on our like TV networks. So you had to get cable and pay for cable to be able to watch wrestling, which at the time I didn't have. So my only real exposure to it was through this video game. So that's sort of how I learned the roster and learned moves and like stories and things like that. And from there, once I realized how big a thing it actually was, I'd like every week beg mum and dad to take me to like the video store at Blockbuster to rent old pay-per-view tapes and VCRs and everything like that.
Dude, renting VHS tapes back in the late 90s, early 2000s, that's where it was. It was so much fun.
Yeah, so I think this might not be correct, but my first memory of like the first tape that I got from the video store that really sort of gave me a deeper dive into wrestling past the game, I think was WrestleMania 2000, because my earliest memories with that, and my best earliest memories with that TLC or the Triangle Ladder match between the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. That stuck out in my head as like, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to see more of this.
I'm going to watch this forever.
Yeah. So my first, because I think being on the cover and being one of the main guys on the demo, The Rock was my first sort of favorite, but that was, I think he was sort of just my like, my kind of pathway into wrestling. Once I like kind of took that deep dive in, then The Undertaker immediately became my guy. He was my favorite. And the Hardy Boys as well, from that match and from their kind of doings at the time, they became like a huge reason that got me hooked.
Hell yeah. So Ben, let's get into it. Let's talk about wrestling figures. Like, what makes you love wrestling figures so much?
So I loved toys as a kid. I was always making up imaginative stuff and playing out scenarios and things like that. And I had other toys, like I've still got a few of my original like Power Rangers toys back here and a few of the other things that I really sunk my teeth into as a kid. But I don't know, wrestling figures, I guess because I was just so into wrestling, but also just because there were so many characters to get, like it almost became a little bit of a thrill to collect them, because you could be like, oh, I might be able to get this new character and this new one. It's not like you just get the main characters of a TV show and that be it. Like there's so many of them to kind of dive into. So I think that was my initial appeal.
Oh, totally. Like the fact that they're based off real people and they're telling these stories every week. You just need to collect everyone, even if it's just one person. Even if it's just one person that sticks out in your memory for having one great match, you have to have that action figure.
100%. And I think like, because I was so big into toys as a kid, that always became really exciting, which I kind of miss this to a degree, but also am thankful for the way we have things now. But walking into like a department store or a toy store as a kid and having no idea what new figures were coming out, and just running to the toy section and being like, oh my God, there's this new figure that I haven't seen. Now, of course, we get months ahead, the heads up on like who's coming out, and we get to see all the pictures and renders and things like that. But that feeling as a kid going in and being like, oh my God, I had no idea this new toy's here.
I was going to bring up, like, you don't walk into stores and find what you want anymore. You know everything that's coming out months ahead. And like, well, for you, you can't even really walk into many stores and find what you're looking for because of your, location in the world.
Yeah, so around me anyway, a lot of the stores, like as a kid, I could go in and they had like a pretty good selection of figs that I could go in and get. But probably once I was about 10 or 11 maybe, is when I kind of stopped actively buying them, because I was sort of just about going into high school. And everybody reaches that stage in their wrestling fandom where they're like, oh, I'm like too cool for this now and getting too old, which I never stopped watching, but I was like, all right, it's time for me to stop playing with toys now. Like, this is it. So I packed them all away. And then it wasn't until probably 3 or 4 years later, during the middle of high school, when I was probably like 15 or 16, I was like, no, fuck it. I'm still so in love with toys. I'm going to get back into this. And then I tried to go and start buying them from shops again, and everything had sort of just dried up. So there are still, like, there's a fairly sized Australian wrestling figure community. I'm a part of a couple of groups on Facebook and things like that. So there are areas where you can still go get them at stores, but around me, it's just, there's nothing.
Well, also the past 2-3 years, stuff has just become more and more hard to come by. There's so many scalpers out there. The popularity has increased tremendously, and you can't even get stuff that you pre-ordered anymore. Cough, cough. Looking at you, Mattel, for canceling our fucking Decade of Dominance Kane figures.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben, I gotta ask, how many figures do you have? Specifically just wrestling, how many figures do you have?
Well, I haven't done an exact count in a while, but I know that I have upwards of about 1,300 just wrestling figures. So lots.
I remember a few years ago, we even had a day where I just finished counting and I was at about 400 at that point. And you counted yours and you were at like 793. This
Yeah,
must have been
yeah.
2 years ago, but we definitely had a day where we inspired each other to count our figures.
Yeah, I always get that. When I bother, because it takes so long to go through and do a count of individual how many figures I have, I always think, all right, now I'm gonna keep that score and like add on to it every time I buy one, and then I just don't, and then I have to take like 2 hours to count them again.
Well, you and I also have different collecting styles too. You get
Mm.
fucking everything, where I stick to more of like a quality over quantity type deal.
Yeah, so I and this is getting real deep into nerdy figure shit, but
So
I have a little bit of an unorthodox way of displaying my figs, because I think a lot of people like to group them by sort of like company, or like toy company, or wrestling company, or things
or
like that.
era.
Or era. Yeah, era's a big one. They have like 80s Attitude Era. Yep. I sort of have a bit of a holistic approach where I kind of just have a bit of a museum display. So I like to kind of, well, the way I do have it is alphabetically. So I have by character A to Z, and so that's a cool way to kind of really showcase everything. But it also means that I just don't really have any limits on myself. I'm just kind of, as you said, getting fucking everything.
Now, Ben, you do have a really interesting way of organizing your figures. Alphabetization is super huge because the way your Instagram is laid out, you want to make a post about a specific wrestler. You have access to that. You can find that figure alphabetically. It has a spot and you can put it right back when you're done. However, I have half of my figures out at the moment. Some are displayed, while I'd say like 400 of them are boxed up in tubs right now. So if I want to post about one specific wrestler, I have to go digging.
Yep. And that's sort of like a part of the reason that I love collecting so much, is because I can sit in my room and sort of look around at all the worlds that I love. And like I hate having anything not displayed. So I've literally just got everything crammed in. I don't like the thought of having something just to like keep it tucked away. I want to have it out on my display. So within alphabetizing my figures as well, for when I have one character, for when I have a litany of that one character, I also organize that through their career chronologically. So I can sort of look at that person, and it's a bit of like an encyclopedia entry, if you like, on that person's career. So I can look through their whole stages.
And as far as wrestling figures go, who are your top favorite wrestlers to collect?
Oh, that is a good question. So, all right, I'll answer that by telling you which characters I have the most of. So, my favorite wrestler of all time, as I touched on with The Undertaker, I think I have the most of him, being about 25 to 30 Undertaker pieces, probably. And then followed closely by CM Punk. I've got a lot of CM Punks. And from there are more characters that I do have like 10, 15 pieces of, but they're probably the biggest two.
I love both The Undertaker and CM Punk.
Mm-hmm.
I have a fair amount of both of their figures as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of, should we get to our top three figs?
Hell yeah. Let's get into this. So I asked Ben
So,
to bring so I asked Ben to bring his top 3 action figures. I brought my top 3 action figures and we're just going to nerd out for them for a bit.
hmm
So Ben,
so
what did you bring to the table
my,
today?
so my number one, again, because I have so many, it's very hard to pick a top three favorite. So what I've decided to do is pick my three favorite wrestlers of all time, and then my favorite pieces of theirs. So the first one I'm going to start with is The Undertaker. As I said, I have this Ruthless Aggression. I want to say like 22, maybe. I'm probably wrong on that, but this was sort of my first figure of The Undertaker that I got when I was a kid, that depicted him in the current live time that I was watching him. Because I had a few older ones from his American Badass run and things like that, but this was the first one that I specifically remember going to the shops and buying and thinking, yes, I finally have like a current Undertaker of the person that I'm seeing on TV. So yeah, it's a pretty basic kind of representation of him. He's got his hat and his trench coat and his gloves on, but this is just sort of, yeah, I guess because it was that first one that I got, it's sort of just held a pretty cool place in my heart, and that's still one of my favorite Undertaker pieces that I've got.
One thing I really like about that piece is that the sleeves on the jacket are his actual arms, and he's not wearing a jacket over the arms because you can pose him in different ways.
Yeah, so that was actually one of the gripes I used to have with this figure, because you can remove his trench coat in the middle, but then, as you said, his sleeves kind of still stay on, so it looks a bit funky if you've got this piece off with his singlet underneath and his sleeves there. But yeah, especially now that I collect to display, this is, yeah, one of my favorite pieces.
Well, that's their way of selling you another action figure with the tattoo arms.
This is true. This is true.
Alrighty, I'm gonna get into one of mine. First one I'm gonna bring to the table is Mattel Defining Moments Macho Man Randy Savage. This figure's
Ooh,
awesome.
yeah.
It is so pretty, and I actually wound up doing a hand swap on it so we can do the little point up in the air.
Nice.
As far as I'm concerned, this figure is incomplete without the accessories. The accessories absolutely make this figure, and I get heartbroken every time I see a picture of this figure without one of the accessories included.
Yeah. That figure fetches a pretty penny, hey, doesn't it?
And I think around $60 complete, maybe more loose.
Yeah, okay. I think I've seen, yeah, a few mint on card pieces go upwards of 100 for that.
Oh yeah, I can't even handle mint on card collecting anymore. It's too much responsibility.
Yep.
All right, Ben, what do you have next for us?
So number two, shifting things over to a little bit more of a modern piece. This one's from Mattel, and this is one of my other favorite wrestlers of all time, CM Punk. This was his Elite 16 piece, which represents one of his most famous moments, the night from Money in the Bank 2011. So this piece, again, it's sort of just, it's pretty basic. This is probably one of my favorite attires of his. I think the colors just really pop. It's got all of his tattoos and everything. And yeah, being particularly at this time, he was absolutely my favorite wrestler on the roster. And so yeah, this is sort of just my quintessential CM Punk figure, and yeah, one of still my favorite pieces that I own.
I believe that attire also resembles the Chicago flag.
Yes, yeah. So he's got his, I think the four red stars on that blue and white background. Yeah, that's his Chicago flag inspired gear.
Mhm.
All right. So what is your number two figure, Greg?
Um, I don't know which one I want to get into, but we were literally just talking about Decade of Dominance Kane. So
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite figures is the ringside exclusive Kane, which is very similar to the Decade of Dominance Kane coming out. This figure's getting a pretty penny as well, at least $80 loose on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the Decade of Dominance one is rising in price on eBay right now, not just because a lot of orders were canceled, but because it's straight up a clone of this figure that not a lot of people were able to get their hands on in the first place.
Yeah, and I'd argue that it's even a slight upgrade on that figure, because he's got the long hair at the back to literally recreate the moment that he unmasked.
Yeah.
I'm very jealous though. Both figures that you've chosen are ones that I do not have. I'm just like,
Really?
I got a lot of Canes, a couple of Macho Mans, not those two.
So Ben, what's your third figure you brought to the table for us today?
So my third one, following the theme of choosing some of my favorite wrestlers, my favorite current wrestler is Seth Rollins. Now, when I first went to WrestleMania, so that's another thing that I haven't touched on about part of my wrestling fandom is before this year, since from 2015 to 2019, every one of those 5 years, I made the trip over and went to WrestleMania. That was always like, it was never meant to be a 5 year period. It was always like, oh, I just want to go to WrestleMania one time. That's like the top thing on my bucket list. And every year after that was just like, I'm going to go again and again. But the first time I went was 2015, which was WrestleMania 31. I went over with my parents. We did like a whole sort of America trip. And yeah, my excitement was just through the roof. That was like the best thing that I'd ever done up until that point, the best show I'd ever seen. So I went in, and before WrestleMania 31, everyone's expectations weren't that high. I I don't remember being skeptical, but I think I was just super pumped up because it was the first time I was going to America and attending it live and everything. So I didn't really care. I was just so excited. But there was a lot of speculation around the main event of that year's card, which was Brock Lesnar defending his title against Roman Reigns. Neither of those options at the time were particularly appealing to the wide majority of the fan base.
They literally booked themselves into a corner with that main event.
Literally, they were stuck. That whether they left Brock as champ and people just felt like, oh, this is just not going anywhere, it's stale, or they go with the new champion of Roman, who everyone just felt was being overpushed and he wasn't ready and no one was really behind him. But in their back pocket, they had their wild card of Seth Rollins, who has Mr. Money in the Bank at the time. Now, in the main event, when Roman and Brock were having their match, which was actually a very decent match, by the way, even though it was getting on, it was fantastic. But the moment that both of them were down in the ring and Seth's music hit, I was sitting, I believe, in the 12th row for this one, and I lost my shit. I was just like, oh my God, because everyone had sort of been like, what if this does happen? But I don't really think they'd actually do that. But he did. He came down and cashed his Money in the Bank, and as we know, walked out with the title, which I was just like, this is the first time I've been to WrestleMania. My favorite wrestler on the roster just left as the world champion, and he wasn't even in the match. So that still stands as my top WrestleMania moment and probably one of the top moments of my entire wrestling fandom.
Want to learn more about Seth Rollins cashing in Money in the Bank? You do? Check out episode 13 of What Did I Just Watch, where my friend Janelle and I talk about this very moment.
So that leads me to my third pick, which is my exclusive Money in the Bank cash-in moment that depicts that very moment of Seth running down and inserting himself into that match, which I also have signed by Seth as well. So this is a pretty special piece in my collection. This is definitely one of my favorites.
Oh, it's so good. I love that figure. I actually have a custom of that figure because I was unable to find it out on the because I was a Toys R Us exclusive, and
yeah.
That was, I think, around the time where the scalping of wrestling figures became really serious. Everyone was looking for that figure when it came out.
Yeah, I've actually, so to go back to sort of my general collecting rules as well, for the most part, I'm a loose collector. So I have my entire display of loose figures out because mint on card, as we said, it's just, I don't have I don't have the space for that to display all of these toys in their boxes. And I love to get them out and pose them and actually enjoy them. So I don't have many. Go ahead.
You want to be able to hold them in your hands too.
Exactly.
That's the best part about wrestling figures. You just hold them in your hands and you got something physical that you can hold on to. And, not to mention 100%. The articulation, your ability to take great photos of them as well.
Yeah, and you've got like a little version of this real life person that you love and watch on TV. So for the most part, I'm a loose collector. But yeah, this piece, I'm luckily enough to own it loose as well. But I also, was able to score it mint on card with that signature as well. Just chef's kiss, tops it off.
Dude, that's going to be worth so much money.
Yeah. So that's, before you get to your third pick, that's another question I was going to ask you. A lot of people maybe don't start, but the money factor of how much things are worth in their collection. A lot of people say, oh, if I was to resell this, I could make so much money off it and everything. I personally don't get into collecting to make money or anything like that. I collect things because I love them. I know you often are a big proponent of sort of buying and reselling and buying more and reselling. What's your sort of view on that?
Well, one of the ways I got a lot of my figures is by buying large lots, keeping what I needed, and then selling off the lots as single figures one by one, normally with accessories with it, because that's what really helps sell a figure, in my opinion. Now,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say I buy, I think I do actually buy with anticipation of figures going up in value. It's difficult to say because wrestling figures are based off real people. Real people eventually pass away, and then after that happens, the value of those figures will increase. However, I've gotten figures over the years that I put in the tubs and forgot about, and I'm looking up online in the past couple months and learn they've tripled in value, selling for $75, $80. And I'm I come to the conclusion that I'm not so attached to that figure, and I'll normally sell it off. And I've actually sold some of my figures off this year to help pay for some of the new AEW figures. And when it comes
Hmm.
to AEW figures, my third figure today is the
What a
Chris
segue.
Jericho little bit of the bubbly exclusive. I love this figure so much. He's my favorite wrestler on the planet. He's been able to reinvent himself so many times. And the fact that this figure was the first AEW exclusive is just so brilliant. It was just like a funny little quirky moment that happened after his first title win. And it worked. He made it work so well. Everything he does, he makes work so well.
The thing I love about that moment as well is, as you said, it was just a tiny little throwaway thing. And I can't remember which interview he said this in, but I've heard him say multiple times that the real joke he was trying to get over there was the Dumb and Dumber reference. And that was the thing he was going for, which ended up just getting totally glazed over in favor of this tiny little throwaway, oh, a little bit of the bubbly, which just blew up into a meme and even spawned its own figure, which is pretty cool.
Now, Ben, considering that you live in Australia, let's talk about shipping prices.
Yes, the shipping prices all the way down under are one of the banes of my existence because, well, okay, let me first start prefacing this by another issue. Another issue that I have, because there's sort of not that much availability in stores around me, and as you said, I collect everything. There's so much stuff that I need to get. So a lot of my orders, most of my orders come from sites like Ringside Collectibles and eBay and Amazon and a few other stores over in the States. So not only before we even get to shipping prices, I also have to deal with the conversion rates of Australian dollars to US dollars. Basically, I end up paying 1.5 of that cost. So, like, if something was $10 US, I already figure in my head that it's going to be $15 Australian. $10 here pretty much can buy you the same thing as $10 in America. It's not like things are cheaper to reflect that imbalance. It's just that our dollar sucks and that we have to pay a lot more of it if we're buying from America. Anyway, I digress. To go back to shipping, once I've purchased figures from the States, because shipping is such a killer, I usually like to order in bulk to save myself paying shipping again and again for every single figure. So when I do a big order, shipping's like an extra $100 sometimes on top of the actual figures that I'm paying for. So a couple of times when I went to the States, I just load up because I'm like, oh, this is excellent. I don't have to pay for the shipping costs that I usually have to deal with. So yeah, that's sort of like just a normal factor in my collecting now, is that I have to factor in shipping prices, and yeah, that's just kind of becomes part of the cost for me.
Well, Ben, luckily, you and I have figured out quite an interesting loophole here. May I
Uh-huh.
introduce the Ben box?
Yes, look at
The Ben
that.
the Ben box started a few years ago. You were traveling to the States for WrestleMania, and
Hmm.
I had a box of figures that I was going to send you at an Australian rate, but we decided to push the order a few months, and I just sent it to you while you were in the States. And it cost $15 to send that package to you.
Yep,
So
yep.
so what we wound up doing over the past year or two is Ben would tell me if there was an exclusive figure or something he had his eye on that he couldn't get in Australia. I would pick one up, open it up for him, and ship it to him loose to save on money for shipping. So we're going to do a little unboxing here today. So
I
don't even know where to start. You know what? I'll start with the weakest links. Recently,
okay, cool. We'll build it up like a card, right? We'll start with the opening match and we'll
Yeah.
build to the main event.
So our
Cool.
opening match, you recently purchased the ringside exclusive Edge that comes with the Hawkins and Ryder heads. And you asked me to grab you a few basic edges so you could do a little swap ski of your own. So
Excellent.
I wound up grabbing you two of the basic edges that were available on Ringside Collectibles. They were $10 a piece on Black Friday. They should always be $10 a piece, if you ask me.
They should be. I agree.
So I'm going to do a little opening for Ben right now. This is probably going to be noisy over headphones. So I'm going to fast forward this part and we'll get into it when the figures are fully opened. And here they are.
The edge heads themselves.
That's not a bad head
Soon to
scan
be
on
edge
either.
heads.
You might be able to have a little fun swapping around these head scans to your other Edge figures.
Yeah, Edge is one of the guys that a lot of times I don't think Mattel has nailed his likeness. So I actually might have some pieces that those scans can go onto to improve a little bit.
One thing that really upsets me is that an Elite One Edge isn't worth as much as you would think. They've done like 2 or 3 other releases that are just so much better figure. The Target Hall of Fame is probably the best Edge figure out there right now.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much the same sculpt as the Elite One. It's just repainted, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the same head and body, and it's just
Yeah,
repainted in that camo gear.
Yeah, because the Elite One was just black on black. It wasn't really any popping designs or anything.
I still love the Elite One Edge though, so it's in my collection.
Me
It's
too.
a front row style of figure. I love it so much. I also have a rated R belt with it.
Yeah, so I think that was at the front of my Edge display as well, but this recent Edge Heads Elite, the ringside exclusive, has bumped him back. I think that's sitting now at the front.
Well, let's get into our next figure I'm opening for you right now.
Yes.
This one was kind of troublesome to track down too, because it went up on pre-order the same day as all the San Diego Comic-Con stuff was coming out. And this figure order was pushed twice before I got the figure. So I'm glad Target didn't pull a Walmart and cancel my order, but I ordered one for me and I ordered one for you.
Oh, it's so good. And I think that did have the same kind of issues as the Walmart ones we just got canceled, where a lot of people's pre-orders didn't get fulfilled. But then alternatively, haven't these started popping up pretty plentifully in stores now?
I've run into them in stores multiple times and just walked past them because I'm like, oh, they're going to make so many. People buy these up and hold on to them. It's just decreasing the value like crazy.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick second. I'm going to pop this open and we'll look at it up close. I'm going to keep this one in the plastic right now because it still has the replaceable hands with it. I think we're really grateful to get replaceable heads and hands with Mattel figures now, even though it took them a fucking decade.
That has been such a step up in all of their pieces, giving those extra heads, extra hands. That's such an improvement. Like we were just talking about with the Edge figures, if they've got older releases where it's a good figure, but the scan just hasn't been nailed, if you've got a couple of options with the new ones, you can just go back and pop them on, which is something that I constantly do.
Now, Ben, speaking of options, let's get into this one.
Oh, yes. Yes, the quintessential Rock figure.
So we lucked out here. I got like one of the last 2 figures that was available on Amazon. I ordered one for me. I ordered one for you. And if you actually watch a previous episode of this show, my roommate throws one of these figures at me mid-filming session, and I throw it up on camera. So that's actually this figure that has already premiered in a previous episode of What Did I Just Watch?
It's already famous.
So I'm actually not going to unbox this one today because there's so many little accessories. I want to make sure I don't lose them, but maybe I'll pop a photo in at this point, and
Yeah,
you guys can enjoy that one because this is such a great figure. You're gonna have so much fun
such
swapping
a cool
around the heads
piece.
and hands on these. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's hands down the best rock figure we've gotten.
Absolutely. I've opened it up and the head scans show so much character. It's just beautiful.
Hmm.
They're doing a great
Yeah,
job with this ultimate line.
so good, so good.
Oh, let's get into this one.
Oh yeah, nice. Hmm.
So Ringside took us on a little bit of a ride. They announced the pre-order for this, and with the popularity of AEW figures, it made everybody jump at it because they're basically repaints of Series 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And it's awesome though. They did a great job. They're actually better than the Series 1 and 2 Cody and Goldust.
So let's just explain as well. That's depicting their match from Double or Nothing, where Dustin's head got busted open and he was just drowning in blood. There was so much blood in that match. And with Cody's bleach blonde hair, and it soaked his as well. And it was just such an intense visual. But I was listening, for anyone else who listens to the Major Wrestling Figure podcast with Matt Cardona and Brian Myers, I think, they touched on this, where I think that is the first depiction of blood on a wrestling figure in, I think they said it was like 10 years or something.
I think there's a 1 out of 100 exclusive Terry Funk from Jack's Classics that has blood on it, and that's
Correct.
like the only one.
Correct. And I think it was either Terry Funk or maybe even Tommy Dreamer has had a micro brawler since then with blood on the face. But
Oh, really?
for the most part, yeah, there hasn't really been that depicted. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they did a great job with the paint on these.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to crack this open. We'll get some close-ups. Here we are. We'll get into Cody first.
Look at that head scan. So intense. And the
I might.
smeared handprint.
It's beautiful. They do a great thing too, where they put plastic around any accessories. So you can enjoy it as a mint and box collector, but if you eventually want to open it, you're not going to run into any of the rub you get from accessories.
I also like that keeps the accessories like in place in the packaging. I've got one of my mint on card Undertaker displays is from the American Badass Undertaker, and he's got a chain next to him, but it's like fallen out of the packaging inside. That's like a nice little thing to keep the mint on card displays looking good.
That actually happened on the Rock figure that I haven't opened yet. One of the hands actually like fell below. So a mint on box collector would hate that, but because I'm going to open it for you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Alrighty. Goldust. I've held the Series 2 in my hands. I don't know if you've gotten your Series 2 yet, but it's roughly the same body. You got some of the paint details with the blood. This is an awesome figure. They killed it. I just love Goldust figures.
Yeah. He's a guy that, like, I love Goldust. I'm a big fan, but he's never been like one of my absolute favorites or anything. But just because he's such a toyetic character, I've ended up with like 8 or 9 Goldust figures because they're all just so cool.
Same here. I have every elite of him, and they just do such a fantastic paint job. Alrighty, Ben, I got one more for you. Do you know what it is?
I'm so excited for this one. I thought I missed out on this one, but the Jushin Thunder Liger, that is so beautiful.
You specifically messaged me on a Black Friday sale and asked me to grab just this one for you, because if you spend $50 on Ringside, you get free shipping.
In America.
In America.
So that's another one of my hurdles that I run into with my, as I was explaining before, because I buy in bulk to save on shipping and sort of just get big orders at a time, anything that kind of trickles out, any new releases that happen after I've just bought a big bulk order, I can't just go in and snag because I'm waiting for my list to sort of build up again before I go do another order. So these Storm Collectibles Jushin Liger figures, the first one that got released was just beautiful as well. But I think that very scenario happened. It dropped just after I'd got a big order. So I was like, okay, I'll just wait and I'll get that with my next big order. But by the time I was ready to do another order, it had long gone and sold out. And at the time, that was the only release. So I thought I'd missed out. But then they launched a few more repaints of it, which was this one that we're talking about and a few other colors, which also the first run sold out of them and I missed them. So I was like, damn it. And the eBay prices were through the roof. But once they relaunched a kind of second run of these pieces and I saw it go up on the Black Friday sale, I was like, Greg, get it for me now. I'm not missing it again.
Well, also a lot of wrestling figure collectors complain about repaints. Not with this figure though. This figure did, like, the fact that they can just repaint a single figure and make it look so good is just awesome.
So good.
Well, it's interesting too because these figures go for like over 100 in Japan. And Storm Collectibles was able to make a cost-effective version of it. I also think it's kind of weird that you're closer to Japan than the United States and you can't get them directly from there.
Yeah, true. To be honest, I've never really looked into getting anything straight from Japan. I've always just sort of gone to the States, but maybe I should look into that.
I feel like if you were bigger into video games, you would have looked more into getting stuff directly from Japan at this point.
Yeah, I know a few people that are huge into anime and that kind of stuff, and they get a lot of stuff direct from Japan.
So I'm going to crack this open real quick and look at it up close.
Have you got any of the other Storm Collectibles pieces, like the Hogans?
I don't know.
Oh, they're so good. They're so good.
All right, I'm going to keep this one in the plastic as well. But I'm just, and for obvious reasons, all the hands just fell. So I'm going to keep him in here for a sec, but this is great to look at up close. I didn't even notice the cape on this until right now. This is beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Stuff Goods cape.
And so I've never held one of the Storm Collectibles in my hands before. So this is a treat.
They're such good pieces. So beautiful.
Yeah, they did a great job with this. Wow. Oh, wow. One of the great things is they put a little piece of wire lining the cape, and you can position the cape in, like, if he's like running down to the ring, you can make it seem like the cape is just like flying behind him.
That's cool.
You were going to have some fun taking photos with this, Ben.
I'm going to have lots of fun. I'm so excited.
And I promise once we're done recording, I'm going to pick up all the hands off the floor and make sure they find their way.
You better. You better.
Well, I think that does it for our unboxing. We have some really fun stories to get into also, because we haven't talked about this till right now. You and I have actually met before.
We have indeed. So